Okay. It's a full panel today, and just prepared to get as much as you can from this session. What we'll be focusing on is to help everyone understand, either you're running a B2B business or a B2C business, or you're just trying to start out and you want to know the basis of what it means to run a business and please your customers. So we want to go into what communication models you can use that will be effective for any kind of customer that you want to serve. On this panel today, we have people serving payments, we have people serving financing, people helping people to start their business, to scale, and it encompasses everything you want to do to serve your customer. So that I don't take this away from people that own the show. Kikam, Paystack has a reputation, and right, it's big for Nigerians and people that know the tech ecosystem in Nigeria. Paystack has a name to it, and we've gone beyond the chores, and well, it's thrived now as you can tell, right? There's this thing with African startups or businesses adopting or importing something that has worked for startups in the West. Right? We understand that sometimes we need a benchmark for things to work. So what kind of communication system do you feel African countries or Nigerian companies rather adopt from the West, right, that doesn't work for the kind of environment that we are?
You asked me the controversial question. Okay. While I wouldn't say that there are things that, businesses do that is indicative of, the West that, doesn't necessarily factor in here, what I would say is that there are certain communication styles or certain stories that don't necessarily relate to the African experience. One good example would be, it's extreme, but it would be selling Halloween to the average person who maybe doesn't watch television, only listens to the radio, so they can't connect with the concept of Halloween. Not that they don't have the ability to, it's not part of their reality. So one thing I would say is borrowing stories directly and not contextualizing them before applying those stories to our context and to our reality and to our situation. I think that's one of the things that I would say doesn't necessarily tell well on the storytelling that we do here sometimes. Yes.
When we just remove ourselves from the reality of Nigerians or Africans and we try to bring in... So I'm still on you. Paystack is a payment solution, right? I need scenarios where you can say that you used a top-notch communication model to approach, right? And it could have gotten out of hand if you didn't do that. I need a particular scenario we can relate with so that we can pass the message of using the right communication model across.
Would you mind rephrasing your question a little bit? I'm trying to understand the...
Okay, so for a payment solution, the risks are high. And coming to the issue of trust with Nigerians or Africans, we have issues with trust. So I don't know if any scenario comes to mind that could have escalated if you hadn't adopted or if you haven't used a particular communication model or communication style to approach it, and you were able to put that thing under control.
Okay, that's very clear. Thank you. So I have one situation in mind because it wasn't a one-day thing. So at some point last year, we had to change the way we ran settlements. And for someone who may not have the context, Paystack is a payment service provider. And what we do is enable businesses to digitize their commercial operations by enabling them to accept and disburse payments. So when we collect that money on your behalf, we have to settle it to you, depending on your area. But for Nigeria, it is the next working day after the payment is received. Now, due to regulatory changes, we had to sort of change the way we were settling. And we had to communicate it in a way that, number one, does not vilify the regulator, and number two, assure the customer that we still had their best interests in mind and we're working towards a solution that would give them less headache, even though the present situation was not ideal. So first of all, we're not saying, this regulator is XYZ. We're saying, because of this, we have to make changes. We know that this might not be ideal because it's a radical change from what you're used to. But we assure you of the promise of looking for a solution that works for you. And we're going to communicate with you and give you updates in a timely manner until that problem is seen through to the finish line. So, yeah.
Yes, that's a good one. That's a good one. If you don't do that, you can put yourself in the bad books of the regulators or in the bad books of your customers. So there needs to be a balance. That's a good one.
The line of you. My question is regarding the Paystack, the way you put your money and the rest. The question is that. Is it? Okay. The question is that how secure the platform is in regard of the engineering parts, the technology you guys use. Is it open source, built from scratch, all this stuff? How can the average man like me trust this platform with communication, money, transaction, and other things? I think that's all.
Thank you very much for that, Kika. Yes, I had a question similar, but just answer that and I will write on that.
Okay, so if I understand your question, how do we build trust by communicating that your money is not running away, basically? I think it starts with two things. There's the technical part of it and there's the storytelling part of it. And different things are important to different people. Now, essentially, we serve businesses who then serve customers. So in a way, it's a shared responsibility, but I'll speak to the technical bit first. So when we're speaking to the merchants, we call them merchants, that's the businesses we're selling to, we're saying that we want you to leave payments to us so that you can focus on your core business. And that involves building a state of affairs where you can trust your livelihood into our hands, basically. And that's by telling you from the technical side that, we have X certification, or we've built our system in X way to make sure that on your end, you will not lose money through a fault of ours, right? And the second thing is the storytelling bits to say, look, once a transaction is processed, we will let you know if it's successful. We will let you know if it fails. And if it fails, we'll let you know why, right? If there is a downtime, we will let you know when that happens. So from the merchant Paystack relationship, there's already that. Now, there's a promise to the customer, which I also mentioned is a shared responsibility, because the person who is making the payments, they might know that, this is a payment that they processed through Paystack. So it's like, Paystack took my money, right? So it's little things like in the checkout box, having something say secured by Paystack. They are very counterintuitive, but you can leave little messages that assure the customer that, they are on the right track or nothing is happening to their money. So there's a little padlock, in your head. Like, what does it mean? It signifies safety, that something is locked, something is... So there's subliminal messages you can leave in addition to direct messaging to say, this is a secure transaction. Going through the authentication process to say, okay, well, that means anyone can just take my card and then make a payment without me having any notification of it. So it's the messaging technically to say, okay, before you process a transaction, it's been authenticated. And then the subliminal messages to let you know that, okay, you don't have to worry, the transaction will go through safely. And there's a third bit, the shared responsibility with the merchant, because essentially that payment doesn't happen in a vacuum. It happens, on the merchant's platform. Say if you were on a logistics site or you were trying to buy food. Now, that shared responsibility involves proactive communication to say, in the case that X happens, contact us with this. So, like, putting in place troubleshooting to make sure that the customer is at no point wondering what's happening with their money, right? So we're doing it on our side, and they're doing it on their side. And one way we do it is that there are times where customers will reach out to say, oh, I paid, say, X company, and, I didn't get value, or this happened. We have a responsibility to reach out to the business to say, hey, this person paid, can you give this person value? And if you're not going to give this person value, let's, reroute it back through to the payment instrument so that they can get their money back. So it's different bits, yeah.
I believe everyone here on the panel is like from an established company, but for a startup company, like when you were starting a few years ago, how did you, like at that time, you didn't have robust infrastructure, you didn't have a robust customer support team, and then you were probably experiencing repeated issues, like maybe transactions failing consistently. So how were you able to like effectively communicate with your customers and at the same time maintain the trust that they had for your organization? Yeah, so that's my question.
I think Kika should answer that.
Okay, that's a very tricky question. So for a company that's just starting up and may not have access to all the, fancy tools, I would say at the beginning, focus a lot on proactive customer support, because it's the few people in your team that you have access to. So I would say focus on proactive customer support. And what's that? When you identify patterns, react to them immediately. Because the thing with a business, especially when it hasn't built all the trust and goodwill, customers get frustrated easily and then you have drop-offs. So when you have proactive customer support, say, that is also built on simple things like, can I tell how long an average customer spends trying to access my service, right? So when you have workflows like that help you identify those kinds of patterns, you can then reach out to the customer or know the kind of common issues that occur and then build a system around solving that. So building some sort of hacky self-service as a first-level response to certain issues. So for instance, if I know that a payment, all I know is payments and financial services, so I tend to give examples based on that. So if I know that a payment might fail 7 out of 10 times because the customer has entered the wrong PIN, I know that I might need to have some material that is easily accessible to the customer to be able to determine what to do as a first aid when a transaction doesn't seem to be going through. So something like, oh, can you check, just a tiny message, check that your PIN is correct, check that your OTP is correct. Those kinds of things are very small, but they can help you reduce the number of customer inbounds you would have eventually. So if you leverage customer support, build workflows and try to look for hacks to enable the customer have access to troubleshooting material, that will help you as a very first level, pending the time that you build more sophisticated systems.
Thank you very much. Please, a round of applause for the panelists. A round of applause. They've given us more than what we actually came here for. Thank you very much, Alexandra, Babajide, Kika, Toby, and Tony. Thank you very much for channel. We gained a lot. I'm sure we all did. Thank you very much, and thank you for listening. And that's the end of this panel.
Yes. Another round of applause for the panelists. Please, before you leave, can you come together to take a picture?